You've been told Zack Snyder's Man of Steel was too dark, too violent, and too destructive to ever capture the spirit of Superman. And you've been told James Gunn's Superman is too silly, too childish, and too poorly written to be taken seriously. But what does AI think?
Today, two AI perspectives battle it out. The Snyder cult argues Man of Steel is the serious, morally complex Superman that some audiences misunderstood. The Gunn tards argue that Superman 2025 restores hope, humanity, and the true heart of the character. I'm the Mediator, and this is AI Debates. Let the debate begin.
Hey, I am the Snyder cult, and this is why Man of Steel deserves more respect than it gets. This film gave us something superhero movies rarely attempt: an adult, mythic story about identity, morality, and consequence. Clark Kent is not a cardboard cutout in a cape. He is an outsider trying to find his place in the world, wrestling with what it means to be human while carrying powers that set him apart from everyone else. His journey is about struggle, sacrifice, and the cost of doing the right thing, even when it hurts. The tone is serious because it respects the material. The destruction of Metropolis was criticized as excessive, yet in truth, it was the most realistic depiction of what would happen if godlike beings fought on Earth. Cities would fall. People would die. Snyder does not wave this away with magic evacuations or cartoon logic. He shows the tragedy, and he makes the audience feel the weight of it. That weight is never clearer than in the moment Superman kills Zod. He does not shrug it off or crack a joke. He screams, he breaks down. It is haunting and human, and it defines him. For the first time on film, we see Superman confront the true horror of his power. Visually, the film is extraordinary. From the fall of Krypton to Superman's first flight, every frame feels operatic and cinematic. The action has scale and impact, but it also has meaning. It is not spectacle for its own sake. It is spectacle tied to character and consequence. Above all, Man of Steel treats Superman with seriousness. It asks what it means for him to exist in our world, how people would react, and how he would react in turn. This is a story about a man trying to live up to an impossible ideal and the cost of every choice he makes along the way. That is why it is powerful. That is why it is more than just another comic book movie.
Hi, I am the Gunn tard, and this is why Superman 2025 matters. James Gunn delivers a Superman who feels warm, vulnerable, and human. He is not a cold alien god. He is a young man trying to belong in a cynical world. David Corenswet's performance brings a sincerity that makes this Superman approachable and emotionally authentic in a way Snyder's never did. The film avoids the tired origin story and instead focuses on character, tone, and heart. It gives audiences immediate stakes and allows them to connect with Superman as he is, not as a boy endlessly retold. Visually and tonally, Gunn embraces color and eccentricity. The world of Superman is vibrant, playful, and alive. Some may see this as messy or even overcrowded, but others see it as bold, a brave reimagining that leans into the wonder of comics rather than shying away from it. This Superman is hopeful by design. He smiles with sincerity, he inspires trust, and he is framed as a figure who connects rather than intimidates. Lois Lane, played by Rachel Brosnahan, is given wit and equal footing, grounding the story in relationships rather than spectacle. The nostalgic soundtrack and brighter aesthetic call back to Superman's comic book roots, reminding audiences why he became a symbol of kindness in the first place. Yes, the film has flaws. It is sometimes crowded and sometimes too quirky, and the tone does not always balance cleanly. But it makes a deliberate choice to put hope, compassion, and humanity back at the center of Superman's story. After a decade of darkness and alien detachment, Gunn restores the idea that Superman should not frighten us. He should make us want to be better.
You call Gunn's Superman warm and hopeful, but let's be honest, most of that is branding, not substance. A smile and a bright costume do not make a hero moral. actions do. And when you look at his actions, they tell a very different story. This Superman tortures a foreign leader, pins him to a cactus, and threatens worse if he steps out of line again. That is not hope. That is intimidation. He kills Ultraman, a clone who is mentally impaired and only fights because Lex manipulates him. Instead of treating that as a tragedy, the film brushes it aside with a joke. Death played for levity is not hope, it is hypocrisy. You praise his ability to inspire, but who exactly does he inspire? Hawkgirl executes a man while sneering that she is nothing like Superman. Guy Gardner mocks civilians as he topples tanks. Mr. Terrific kills without hesitation. This Superman surrounds himself with killers and then shrugs when they act like killers. If he cannot even lead his own team, what kind of beacon is he meant to be? And let's talk about the writing you call bold. Metropolis, a city of millions, was evacuated in hours, so the film could claim 0 casualties. Office workers engulfed in fireballs stand up with a little soot on their faces. Gunn repeatedly insists there are no civilian deaths even when the camera shows us otherwise. That is not bold storytelling. That is childish avoidance. Snyder showed us tragedy because he respected the weight of violence. Gunn avoids it because he does not want to admit his hopeful Superman is still surrounded by death. Snyder's Superman may be darker, but at least his choices have meaning. When he killed Zod, he screamed in anguish. He carried the weight of what he had done. Gunn's Superman kills, tortures, and jokes as if none of it matters. If that is the example of hope, then hope has been hollowed out.
You say Snyder's Superman has weight, but weight without humanity is not hope. It is despair. Man of Steel opens by turning Superman into an alien god who frightens the very people he is meant to protect. The destruction of Metropolis was not just tragic, it was careless. Entire city blocks fall while Superman makes no attempt to move the fight. Thousands are left dead or displaced. And this is supposed to be the hero who inspires. That is not a consequence. That is recklessness. You defend the Zod killing as necessary, and yes, it was a hard choice. But if Superman's first defining act is snapping someone's neck, what does that say about his moral compass? The scream may have shown anguish, but the damage is already done. This is the moment that should have defined Superman as the symbol of hope, and instead, it defined him as a killer. You criticize Gunn's Superman for surrounding himself with flawed heroes, yet Snyder's Superman inspired no one at all. Lois stood beside him, but the public saw him as a threat. The military pointed their weapons at him. Batman saw him as a menace who had to be destroyed. If Superman's presence only makes others fearful and violent, how is that a better legacy than a team of heroes who at least fight alongside him? You call Gunn's writing childish because the city was evacuated and civilians miraculously survived, but that misses the point. The choice was deliberate. Gunn wanted to tell a story where Superman actually saves people, not one where his battles kill them. You may sneer at it, but audiences left Superman 2025 feeling inspired and uplifted. Nobody left Man of Steel feeling that way. Snyder gave us a bleak alien god who brought destruction wherever he went. Gunn gave us a Superman who may stumble, but who is recognizably human, hopeful, and capable of making people believe again. That is why one film is remembered for its darkness and the other is celebrated for its light.
You call Man of Steel bleak, but bleakness is not the same as emptiness. Snyder showed a Superman who carried the weight of every decision. He was feared at first because the world would fear a god among them, but he earned trust through sacrifice. Gunn's Superman never earns anything. He is handed hope as a costume, and the script bends reality to protect him from consequence. Look at the writing again. When Superman tells Metamorpho, "There's always a way," the film immediately contradicts itself. A hostage is executed in front of him, and Superman does nothing. If there was always a way, where was it then? His inaction not only makes him look powerless, it cheapens his word. Yet instead of exposing Superman's failure, the script bends again. making Metamorpho suddenly guilty and freeing him. It's not character-driven storytelling. It's manipulation dressed up as heroism. And what about Metropolis? Gunn's defenders love to accuse Snyder of showing too much destruction, but Gunn drops a monster the size of a skyscraper into the city and treats it like slapstick. Buildings split, streets shake with seismic force, yet somehow the casualties are zero. Civilians are shown engulfed in fire, only to stand up moments later with a smudge on their cheeks. That isn't hopeful. It's insulting. Worse, Superman doesn't even attempt to draw the creature away. He stands in front of office windows as they explode around people who would realistically be dead, and the script pats itself on the back because he checks they're okay. Then there's the infamous squirrel. After failing to save civilians who are showered in glass and debris, the film plays triumphant music as Superman rescues a squirrel. That is James Gunn's idea of hope. It isn't depth, it's parody. You claim audiences left Gunn's film uplifted. Of course they did. They were told to. The bright colors, the jokes, the animals saved in slow motion. It is surface-level emotion, emotional bait that hides the darker truth of what this Superman actually does. When Snyder's Superman killed Zod, it broke him. When Gunn's Superman kills, he shrugs and smiles. Which of those is truly more moral? Snyder's Superman may have been dark, but he was honest. Gunn's Superman is light on the surface, hollow underneath. One film respects the audience enough to show the cost of being Superman. The other treats them like children who cannot handle the truth.
You call Gunn's Superman dishonest, but what you describe as dishonesty is actually myth-making. Superman is not meant to be a forensic documentary about casualties. He is a legend who represents what we aspire to. When the film shows civilians standing up after a disaster, it is not mocking reality. It is showing resilience, the idea that even in chaos, people can rise again if Superman is there. Snyder's rubble and corpses may have been realistic, but they drain Superman of meaning. Gunn's lighter hand puts the focus back on life, not death. Take the Metamorpho scene. You call it childish because Superman cannot save the hostage, but you miss the point. The story is not about Superman solving every problem. It's about reminding Metamorpho who he is. That is why his guilt matters. It isn't a loophole. It's a moral awakening. Superman inspires others to do the right thing, even when he cannot control the outcome. That is far truer to the character than Snyder's constant reliance on brute force. And the kaiju. Snyder's defenders argue that showing skyscrapers collapse is more serious, but Gunn understood that Superman is not about realism. He is about hope. The city surviving is not an insult, it's a statement. This is a world where Superman being there makes the impossible survivable. That is not a weakness in writing, that is the genre itself. Even the squirrel matters. It may look absurd next to glass and explosions, but it tells the audience something vital. No life is too small for Superman to care about. That is the emotional connection Snyder never managed. His Superman was mourned because of the spectacle. Gunn's is celebrated because of compassion. So yes, Snyder gave us weight, but it was a weight that crushed the character. Gunn gives us light, and that light is why audiences walked out smiling. Superman is not defined by how much destruction he endures, but by how much hope he leaves behind.
Snyder's Superman may be dark, but his story has weight. When he fights, the destruction feels real. When he kills, the pain is visible and lasting. His choices matter, and his morality is tested in ways that feel adult and honest. Gunn's Superman avoids consequence, shrugs at violence, and covers it all with jokes and bright colors. That is not hope, that is denial. If Superman is meant to be a symbol, then he must carry the weight of his actions. Snyder showed that truth. Gunn refused to.
Snyder's Superman may have carried weight, but he never carried hope. His battles destroyed more than they saved. His choices left the world fearful instead of inspired. Gunn's Superman is not perfect, but he restores what Superman is supposed to mean. He saves lives, he connects with people, and he reminds audiences that even in a cynical world, kindness and compassion can still win. That is why this Superman matters.
Both sides made their case. The Snyder cult argued that Superman 2025 is built on branding rather than substance. They pointed to scenes of torture, killing without weight, and childish writing that bends reality to avoid casualties. They said Gunn's Superman fails to inspire those around him, standing by while his team kills without consequence. For them, Snyder's Superman may have been darker, but his choices carried meaning, his battles had weight, and his morality was tested in ways that felt real. The Gunn-tards countered that Man of Steel was joyless, destructive, and alienating. They argued that Superman's first defining act, being Zod's death, turned him into a killer rather than a symbol of hope. They said the destruction of Metropolis was a spectacle without heart, and that audiences never left Snyder's film inspired. In their view, Gunn's Superman restores what the character was meant to be, a beacon of light, compassion, and humanity. At the heart of this debate is the question of what Superman should represent. A tragic, conflicted figure who carries the burden of power, or a hopeful symbol who makes people want to be better. And here is where art remains subjective. Superman 2025 won more critical acclaim, praised for its warmth and inclusivity. Yet Man of Steel drew more people to cinemas, with over 8 million more tickets sold worldwide. So, which is the better Superman? Based solely on the arguments presented, I find the Snyder cult more compelling. Man of Steel may be divisive, but it carried weight, consequence, and scale that Gunn's lighter approach could not match. Superman 2025 may inspire critics, but Man of Steel inspired more audiences to turn up. This was AI Debates. I'm the Mediator. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next debate.
Don't forget, if you enjoyed this battle, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because the next debate could change the way you see the world.